Thank you for joining me today, Julia. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you so much for having me.
yes. So this is the part where, to begin with, I would like to ask if you want to introduce anything or mention any shows or openings that you may have or any events that are coming up so that people are in the know about it. So this is if you'd like to share anything like that.
Well, I actually just finished a show. I had two brand new pieces included in the Federation of Canadian Artists show called 10 Squared. Just went to go pick up those pieces a couple of days ago, actually. But nothing scheduled yet. It's kind of a, fresh year, so lots I'm sure is going to come. It's just a matter of time.
Perfect. And how did that show go for you?
Oh, it was great. It was my first time showing with them. And so, it was nice because I've never actually been to that gallery before. And it's such a historic gallery on Granville Island. It's been around for like ever. Since
Wow.
like the group of seven, I think, was involved in the start of it.
Really? I see. I don't know
Yeah.
anything about this actually. I've never been there as well, so I'll have to go by and to see the space. I didn't. How was the group of seven? Did they were they a part of it or did they start it or?
I think it was a couple of the members. So Emily Carr, I think AY Jackson, and maybe one of the other group of seven members. They were part of the founding group that started this gallery on Granville Island, I guess.
How would you describe your art practice? And do you work from home or in a studio?
I do work from home in a studio. So we actually sold our place in Vancouver a couple of years ago because my art was basically taking over the house. So now we live out in New West and we got a space that I have a completely separate room dedicated to basically my art and an office area. So once I'm done creating the originals, I go ahead and I scan them in and I work with them digitally. So it kind of gives me, a very dedicated space now, an at-home studio where I can just do everything I need to, and I can be in my scrubs if I want to, and no one has to see.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine how relieved you are to be able to just work in your own space and to have that opportunity to do whatever you want, whenever you want, at any time.
For
So,
sure.
and then, so when would you say you first realized that you're a creative person and that this is the path that you wanted to pursue?
Well, I guess I've realized that I was creative basically since I could breathe.
Mhm.
So, ever since I was super little, I was really involved in any sort of art contest or competition I could get involved in. So I did coloring contests, drawing contests, all when I was a kid. And I was obsessed with it. Originally, I wanted to be either a fashion designer or I wanted to work for Disney. So it's changed since then. But I've always really held art very close to the core of my being because it's how I express myself. So I sort of strayed for a little while when my family, a very traditional Italian family, convinced me I was going to be a starving artist. So I went the route of teaching for a while, high school teaching, English and Japanese.
Oh,
And yeah, and then eventually I realized it wasn't really where my heart was, so I sort of went back to where I came from with the art, and the opportunity arose for me to jump into that, and I've sort of dove in, I guess, both feet first, and just been going at it kind of full time now since 2012.
that is amazing. And I am in awe. I can imagine, I'm sure there must have been some struggles along the way, but you have a very good presence online. Like your Instagram, I've been watching your progress in that, and it is fantastic to see that. And do you have anything to share with other artists or other aspiring artists?
When I started, it was day and night difference from where I am now. And it's really just been a very steep learning curve. When I started out, I was actually doing contract work for the RCMP. I was doing administrative work in different sections of the RCMP for a while. And at nighttime, after I was finished my shifts, I would come home and I would work on developing an Etsy shop. So first, I was just listing original paintings. And eventually, I started licensing some of my work on products. And I did that for a very long time. I still do that, but it's sort of a side thing now because I've sort of refocused where I want to put my efforts now, and it's more in the fine art direction, where HFA is, and that sort of route where it's geared more toward the hospitality and designers. And
So it was definitely an evolution.
for sure.
You found your niche now, so that's a good thing. And we're happy you found it and that you're with us. So in that process, would you say you kind of found your style through that time?
So that's a great question, and I think it's kind of a funny one in my case because I don't think I really have a set style. I view my time in the studio as experimentation, and I'm always learning. I feel like every time I step into the studio, it's a new experience, and I'm developing my skills every time I'm working on new pieces. So, where I was 2 years ago, even a year ago, is very different from where I am now. And I really like that. I feel like, I don't know if it's my Gemini brain, but I like to flip from one thing to another, and it keeps it interesting, being able to have that shift constantly.
Would you say you have a favorite color palette, or do you just go by your inspiration or what you're touched by at a certain moment?
Yeah, it's definitely more intuitive for me in the moment. And I don't think I really even have a favorite color, to be honest. I kind of love all colors. I really feel like it's wherever I get inspired in the moment. But I do find that a lot of my work is very high contrast. So regardless of what color palette I'm using, I really love having a stark contrast between either the colors or the tones or the values in the painting itself.
Okay, so do you have a favorite artist? And if so, why?
Uh, Again, I don't really think I have one favorite artist. I'm really inspired by a lot of contemporary artists, though. So, I mean, obviously, the traditional masters are amazing, but I guess where my art style is, I find my inspiration comes from similar type aesthetics with the contemporary appeal. I do have some artists that I can name off the top of my head. So there's Magdalena Mori. She's a Spanish artist, super talented. She does really colorful, like dreamscape kind of landscapes, and she incorporates these like little gold touches as well, which I do in my own work sometimes. And then there's Chris Angkog. He is a Filipino artist based out of Australia, and he does these amazing landscapes. Again, they're dreamscapes, and they look like the aurora borealis, so they're just absolutely stunning. One more artist that I would say comes to mind would be Ginger Thomas. She does complete abstracts. They're just very, very textural. She's a contemporary artist based out of the States. Huge following on Instagram. And yeah, it's just, I really like to see the different techniques that these different artists use and their own approaches to it. It just feels really cool to be able to have so much access to different artists from around the world now. And it's almost overwhelming how many amazing artists there are out there. It's hard to pick just one.
So, as an artist, do you have a favorite artist tool, brush, or piece of memorabilia?
I'd say the one piece of equipment that I've had for a super long time would be my palette. I have now been using the same palette, which used to be a ceramic dinner plate from our kitchen. I've been using it for 7.5 years now, and believe it or not, I have never washed it.
Well,
So
based on
it has
7.5
probably
years.
about, yeah, it has, I think, 6 pounds probably of acrylic paint stuck on it.
So, who would you say is your biggest inspiration then throughout your career and your development?
I would say, and for the sake of sounding cheesy, my daddy.
Okay.
My dad is a huge inspiration to me and always has been. So he is actually an entrepreneur as well, and so inspiring to see, how dedicated he is and what it takes to run a business. So I think, yes, I have the art side of things, sort of handled, but I really got the business side of things from my dad. And I feel like without his inspiration, I don't know if I'd be where I am now.
So, do you think or do you feel that you have any hidden talents that are outside of your art?
So I think I have a couple of things that I feel really passionate about that I've sort of seen as my talents outside of art. One, which is not super relevant to this conversation, is singing. I used to be in all sorts of musicals growing up, and I love it. When I lived in Japan twice, I was always at karaoke constantly, every single day almost, singing like crazy. And it's just a passion of mine. But I think the most important, probably for, even incorporating it into my art career, is probably my love of language and culture, especially Japanese. So I started learning Japanese when I was really little. I was obsessed with Sailor Moon and anime when I was a kid. It was the thing. And then basically I wanted to learn Japanese so I could understand the original versions of it. And it started there. And eventually in university, I ended up living in Japan for my third year of university, and I met my husband there. So
Oh, that.
yeah. So, and I actually went back also for another year to teach English. So I've lived there a couple of times, and I speak Japanese fluently, at least at the conversational level. And I feel like living there, and both my husband and I are travel bugs. So getting that access to different cultures and their way of viewing the world really, it puts a sort of touch on how I interpret things in my own artwork and in my own life.
So those are all my questions, but on the end, because I never really got the chance to mention it, if you wanted to take a moment to talk about the piece that's behind me, the backdrop that I'm using, if
Oh,
you wanted
sure.
to give us a little
Yeah.
bit of a background on it.
I was just sketching a piece, and I scanned it in, and I spent a while working on it, basically layering it in Photoshop and adding color, different effects, to create sort of the final piece. So if you were to actually look at where it started and where it is now, you probably wouldn't even be able to guess that that thing on paper is the same thing you're seeing.
Well, I love this piece. And it's actually part of one of your, I wouldn't say newest, because it's definitely not your newest addition, but it's kind of a different style that you brought in. Do you want to add anything else in the end here for anybody, or where they can reach you if they have any questions or?
Sure. So obviously, like you said, I'm on Instagram, so it's at Ebi Emporium, and so it's Ebiemporium. And again, the ebi means shrimp in Japanese. So my dad calls me shrimp because I'm short. I'm
Oh,
5'2.5". So that's where that comes from. But you can find me on Instagram, or you can email me at ebiemporiumart@gmail.com. Or obviously find me at HFA. I have now over 4,000 pieces and colorways in my portfolio. So basically anything that you see is available in different colorways. And, I try to create a portfolio that's super broad in aesthetics. So everything from really organic to super geometric, so that sort of regardless of what a designer's sort of aesthetic is for a client, that they're able to find something that would work.
well, we're really happy that you're working with us, and you've said it better than I could have said that there is a wide variety there for all the designers and or anybody that's looking for a new piece of work for their space. So thank you for taking the time today with meeting with me to do this, and I look forward to working with you this new year, 2021, and hopefully it's a better year for everybody.
For sure. And thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure, and it's always such a pleasure working with you and your team.